Tightrope, take 7.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Marriage on a Tightrope. I'm Katie.
I'm Alan, and we're still married. This is literally the 7th time we've tried to do that intro, and we've messed up each time. Let's keep rolling, Katie. We're on a roll at this point. This interview today is super fun. It's with Ashlee and Shane, and without any spoilers whatsoever, that was 2 of the takes that we deleted because we didn't want to spoil it. There's a lot of things about this couple that are very unique and different from other people's journeys within a mixed faith marriage. And we're excited for all of you to learn about their story.
I think that you'll love it. It was both surprising and intriguing and very engaging for us to talk with them.
Katie, can I ask you a question? Do you want to have sex conversations with Natasha and other couples?
We've done it a few times. I think I'm ready.
You better believe we've done it a few times.
Oh my gosh, you guys.
We are still promoting and accepting signups for our sex and intimacy masterclass. Do you want to give the details of what exactly that is?
So you can go to marriageonatightrope.thinkific.com. We are extremely immature and decided to make the class $69. It's got to be a good sign.
Now, to be fair, it was my idea, but it got unanimous approval from you and Natasha.
It did. It got unanimous approval. And so
what is the course? Like, what is this thing?
Yeah, what is this thing? So Natasha does a really good job of taking us through how to talk about sex and intimacy and how to enhance your sex and intimacy life together as a couple, especially if you are a mixed faith couple. But really, this can apply to anyone. We go through the tenders, how difficult it is to talk about things like what?
Masturbation, new media choices. When there's a faith crisis involved, everything is being reevaluated, and that can be really scary on both sides. And so you have to talk about some of these things, and it's difficult to know where to start.
We talk about libido differences in both men and women. We just talk about negotiating things that are hard to talk about. So,
and when we say we talk about it, Natasha is a certified sex therapist. There are very few of those, especially within the mixed faith marriage or LDS space. So we absolutely have an expert on our hands here.
Right.
So the whole course, right? It's a pre-recorded presentation from Natasha for 2 hours, and then we get together on Thursday, February 11th at 7 p.m. Mountain on a Zoom call, and that is a 90-minute Q&A.
If you have any questions, you can email us at marriageonatightrope@gmail.com or send us a Facebook message or Instagram message, however you would like to do that. We are going to kick it over to our interview with Shane and Ashlee. We hope you enjoy it.
Shane and Ashlee, thank you very much for having us.
For being here.
Well, I think that they're having us. This is their time.
This is their time.
They're inviting us to their party at this point.
In their bedroom, it looks like, maybe.
Yep, that's it. You got it.
Love it. That's great. Okay, so we see a TV behind you. This is an extremely important question. What shows are you currently binging together?
Oh my gosh. You know,
the real answer to that is she's watching Bridgerton. Finished watching that.
I did too.
And I'm usually downstairs watching a game or hanging out with the boys, or doing my own thing. So
we're in the room together. We'll spend like 30 minutes trying to figure out what to watch.
That's the battle too. We can never figure out. Hey, when we figure something out, it's like I'm falling asleep. So it's our TV watching is kind of spotty. I'll tell you that.
That's probably good for the relationship, to be honest. More time off of the television set. Well, we are stoked. I always say excited. I don't want to say excited. We are stoked to have you guys here. I want to open it up with a question of why in the world did you want to talk about such an intimate thing? Only crazy people want to do this. Why do you want to do it? Ashlee, you reached out first, right? Why do you want to do this?
Yeah, well, I felt like I wanted our story shared. And I feel like ever since we've been going through this, I've just been feeling this feeling of, we've just got to get this out. I want people to not feel so alone, I want others to know that there are so many others that are going through this. And probably because that's the way I also connect with people is, oh my gosh, you too. Like it's not just me. And so I think that's a big reason for me.
Absolutely. Shane.
I think Shane's getting roped into this. Is this
Shane, explain your mindset at the moment.
Well, I'll tell you, I would not be doing this if it wasn't for her. That's for sure. This wasn't my first choice. But, with that being said, she's got such a mind for service and a desire to help. And I see she's passionate about this topic. And so it's one that I want to, I'm mainly here in a supportive role, and hope that, if it can help somebody, I'm good with that. So
awesome.
That's what we're trying to do. That's
great. Well, appreciated on both accounts, whether you're here under your own free will and choice or not. or the free will and choice of your spouse.
They're both laughing. They're smiling.
Oh yes, everyone's happy.
Yeah, everyone's happy. We're good.
Well, we'd love to start where we often do, at the beginning of life. Just tell us a little bit about your upbringing, specifically anything that's relevant to kind of your faith journey of how it was in the church growing up, etc.
Sure. Got 4 boys. Our oldest just turned 16 and also just got a girlfriend.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and a driver's license. And then our next one is 14 and then 11 and 6.
Oh man, we would be such good friends.
I know, you have the same age kids we do.
Anyway, so we're here in Kansas City. We've kind of moved all over the place. We started in Idaho at BYU, Idaho, and then we moved out to Cleveland, Ohio, where he attended dental school. And then we moved down to Texas, where he did AGD, 1-year program. And
what is that? Is that like a specialty?
When you graduate dental school, you have the ability to go right out and be a dentist and do that. Or an AEGD is Advanced Education in General Dentistry. It's kind of just a little residency. So there's a 1-year program sponsored by the Air Force, and then so when I completed that in Texas, we were assigned out in Okinawa, Japan, and spent 3 years over there, where our last son was born. So he's got a kind of cool birth certificate. It looks a little bit different. He's born on base, but still born in Japan. So it was pretty neat. And anyway, I hijacked your question, Ash. You want to finish there or what?
And then we moved to Mountain Home, Idaho, where we were at for 1 year. That was a hard place for me because, living on an island for 3 years and then moving to there, it was just kind of shock, I think. And then after that year, we moved to Kansas City, where he started a pediatric residency. And then that's when we just decided to stay here when he was done. So,
because you loved it so much in Kansas City.
Well, I know I do, because I grew up in Oklahoma mainly, and I love the Midwest. It has a good feel to it.
It was a hostile takeover, really, is what happened. Her parents lived about 5 hours away from Kansas City, and then right as soon as I was finishing the residency, they decided to move to Kansas City, and so there was no getting me out of here, because she was not getting out of here. So
that's right.
Kind of locked me down. So now, her parents live here, and her sister moved in here, not far from us. So
you're never leaving.
We were sinking some pretty deep roots now.
You're locked in.
You are locked in. So you said that you grew up in Oklahoma. Tell us a little bit about that experience and what your family life was like. Did you have 2 active parents? And did you go to church regularly?
Yeah. So, I say I'm from Oklahoma because I lived there for middle school and high school, basically. And that's what I consider home. But our family was active. It was just not what you would consider, I don't think, a strict Orthodox LDS home. My parents were I could tell they had different opinions. Like, my mom didn't mind letting me wear sleeveless tops. My dad didn't like it. Or my mom was the type to be like, let's skip church today. Or she'd be like, on the way home from church, if my dad was at work on the way home from church, she'd be like, should we stop and eat at Burger King? So she was that type, but she wouldn't I don't think she ever did that around my dad. So I think
Come
he
on,
was
Mom, if you're going to break the Sabbath, at least make it a better place than
yeah. Anyway, so that's kind of the home I was in. It wasn't like we weren't the type that like read every night and did FHE every Monday. It was kind of more like oh my gosh, we need to be doing this. Okay, guys, we're going to get on this now. And we'd do it like a few times and then we'd stop for a long time. You know what I mean? So
it sounds a lot like Alan and I's diet.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
We're going to start and then we're just going to let it go. And then we're going to go back to it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually had a really hard time in middle school and high school. I really struggled, especially with, friends at church, feeling like I fit in. I always kind of felt like the odd man out, and I don't know if they all felt the same way, but that's the way I felt. And I felt like they didn't really like me, and I just didn't feel like I fit in. So I really struggled feeling secure at, the youth activities or at church. I think I just felt like something was wrong with me. And partly due to making bad decisions. I was a teenager that was curious. And so there's just choices that I made that didn't line up with what you should be doing as a LDS teenager. And so I felt a lot of shame, I think, from that.
Now, did you feel shame from like leaders or your parents, or was it just like the internal feelings that you had that you shouldn't be doing it and therefore it's causing you to feel fear and shame?
That was basically it, because I don't really remember anything specific happening. I think it was just the overall message that I would get from what's taught. And I knew like, oh, this means that I'm doing something really wrong, and something's wrong with me. And everyone else seems to have it together except for me.
Shane, did you grow up in the same sort of setting in Oklahoma? Where did you grow up? Let's go to you and let's talk a little bit about your upbringing in the church.
Yeah. I grew up out in Idaho, actually, so not quite Oklahoma, but her experience was similar in that we were very active. In fact, I would say to a higher degree, we were extremely active, went to every activity. My dad was often involved in leadership roles, bishoprics, and things like that. And so very, very, very orthodox type of an upbringing where the church was basically feeding every facet of my life. And so I don't recall, fighting that much in my younger years. I just kind of went along with it. That's just what we did. Family home evening, pretty consistent, very consistent reading. There was a few days we'd miss in the week maybe, but for the most part, reading the scriptures as a family, having dinner together, that kind of thing. I grew up in a family of five kids. I was the second oldest, and anyway, so that's kind of was my experience. A lot of time my dad in these bishoprics and leadership callings, Sundays he would be gone for hours and out of the house, and so it was just my mom and our kids. And I remember at times feeling frustrated with just that level of commitment required of him to be gone as often as he was from our family. It just felt like something that I couldn't, I didn't really think about. I don't recall as a kid so much as looking back on that. And I feel a little bit frustrated at just the level of commitment that's asked of people sometimes, and what's in terms of some of these callings. And so anyway, that's kind of where it was, but very much an active kid in school, growing up. Went to Ricks College, BYU, Idaho. And that's actually where I met my wife and served a mission. And how far do you want me to go on this? Or is this kind of falling in? I don't want to skip to the next thing before you're ready.
Well, I do want to talk about your mission. So where did you serve, and what what was your experience? Was it a positive one? Did you like it? Did you have a difficult time?
Yeah, actually, I really enjoyed my mission. In fact, just loved it. I served stateside in Michigan, and it was something that was very special to me. I thoroughly invested myself in that, and had so many great opportunities. I feel like in many ways I can look back on my mission and say it was some of the best years of my life. And I feel like I've tried to figure that out. That's been a frustrating thing for me, because I'm like, well, why the heck did I remember being so happy on my mission? And as compared to, other times of my life, and even now sometimes, and I feel like I was able to, I don't know that I didn't know every answer to the questions. I didn't know the scriptures and could quote them like that. I was never like that, but I definitely felt confident in myself. I think that's where I exhibited the most self-confidence that I've ever had in my life. And then, life happens and you get frustrations and little failures here and there, and then it just creeps in, and doubt and self-confidence is an issue that I've struggled with at times. And I just felt free of that on my mission. And I'm not sure all the reasons why, but I feel like that's something that definitely I can't deny. I had a what I would consider a very special experience on my mission.
I think that is really cool to hear. We've heard both, right? There are people that have had really difficult times, but there are also people who find themselves in this position, or you can say in this space, where they actually did have a good upbringing. They did come from a loving home. They had a good time on their mission, and it was a positive experience. And then, like for Alan, something switches, right? And then things aren't okay. And I get really defensive. I think probably Ashlee does too, like mama bear, when I hear people say, well, you've never invested yourself into this, or you've never wanted this.
You must not have had a testimony.
When people say things like that, it can be so damaging for those who were in it and were pretty happy too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ashlee, why don't you talk about how the first time you met, and then it sounds like, did you write to him his whole mission? Tell us that story.
Oh, no. No. So I was actually when I met him, my missionary that I told that I would marry, before he left on his mission, I happened to be available when he got home. And I actually was talking to this guy through the phone. We've been communicating for 8 months since he got home, and I was going back out to BYU, Idaho, because I had left for a while. And so I decided to go back out there because he was going there, this other guy. And so I went out a month ahead of him. And that's when I met my husband.
The guy had 8 months after his mission. He didn't close the deal. He left the door open, and I decided I'm going to go after it. So.
Smart, very smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we met at a basketball game. Actually, I was out there, and I went to a basketball game to watch my roommate coach a girls team, and he was actually there watching a girl play on the other team. And he saw me there alone and figured I couldn't be alone, but I was. She needed a friend,
so I decided to be that guy.
Hey, there's the confidence coming in, right?
There we go. Seriously. So, when I had met her, I just was fresh from my mission, and or I had been home for a number of months, but not long. And so I think that was the time period of my life when I feel like I had the most self-confidence that I'd ever had. So, and I was like, good thing I had that, because I might have missed this one. So,
so you were married how long? Months after, or?
Oh my gosh, we got married 3 months after meeting.
And
I know. And the funny thing is that when I was first out at Rick's, I was there when it was still Rick's for a little while. But when I was out there, everybody was getting married left and right. And I just was like, I got to find somebody, you know, it was like this like race, like you have to hurry and find this person. Then when I went back out and I was 22 at BYU, Idaho, I literally had a few people tell me I was old because they're like, you should be married by this age if you're out here at BYU, Idaho. And I was like, oh my gosh, people are calling me old. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. Where were we?
Part of it.
This is all part of it. And it's so funny that you say that because my mom, I came home from my mission, right? I was 22 and my mom, she'll never live this down. She said, Katie, you have a small window of time where you'll find someone who will want you at your advanced age.
Oh my
I was like 22. My younger siblings never got that talk.
I mean, to be fair, I almost didn't marry you because of how old you were. So,
shut up. So you
That's
get married 3 months after, and where does life take you?
Well, I mean, it wasn't long before we got pregnant. We stayed in Rexburg until I graduated. I can't remember. It wasn't too long. We were probably there for at least
another 2.5 years
after
we got married, before we moved.
Yeah. And so, and while we were there, we had our first son. He was born on Christmas Day, and his family lived only about 45 minutes away, so we could go visit often while we were out there. And then the interesting part is when we finally leave Idaho, we're on our way out to move out to Ohio. We sold everything that we had, everything, enough to fit in a small car. And my parents were in Minnesota at the time. And so we stopped at their house on our drive out, and we had to stay there for a few weeks because we still, we had to find a home. I think that's what we were doing. And so while we were there, I started noticing my parents finding things to do on Sundays, because I grew up in a LDS home, and I was thinking it got to a point where I think by the third Sunday where they were trying to find something to do instead of going to church, just saying it's kind of weird, you know? And so then my mom sat me down and she said, Ashlee, I just want to let you know that your dad and I and all your siblings do not go to church anymore. And I was like, and literally it was like being in a movie where the room starts spinning and you're just in shock. And I was like in shock. And I was like, what? She's like, I mean, should we call your dad and your husband? And I was like, no, don't do that. Like, let's just sit here and just process this for a second. And so that was the start of, I think, everything that shifted in our lives.
Wow. So, and you were how old when that happened, ish?
About
20,
that would have happened about 20. Yeah, she's about 25.
25.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big bombshell.
That is a huge bombshell. And remind me how many siblings you have?
I have 3 siblings, a
Three
sister,
siblings.
sister and 2 brothers.
So, I mean, I don't know what would be worse. Like, I mean, of course it would feel really like a bombshell, right? That your whole family's out, but also the fact that no one had told you.
Yeah. That was so boggling to me. I was like, why am I the last person to know? And why were they all keeping it from me? I didn't understand. And they were like, well, you have a family, you're pregnant with your second child. We actually didn't want to tell you until you had, gave birth to your child or to Tanner, but they were like, we just figured there was kind of no hiding it now because we're not going on Sundays while you're here. So I figured I'd just tell you type of thing, And so, it was huge.
Did you ask them why
they left? Yeah, it was church history.
Okay.
They had no idea about anything in the church history. They didn't know any of the ugly parts at all. And so they felt, I think it was shocking for them. They felt very betrayed. I think my mom, though, she wanted to stay in, even knowing that stuff. However, it was a really hard situation. I can't imagine the emotions for both of them. But I know that my mom felt like she had an ultimatum given to her. So she just she chose her husband, and I can understand that. And so, but even in the moment of all the heat of that, the fact that she was able to make that choice, I don't know what I would have done if I were her.
Right. Well, this is a really interesting. I'm looking up at my bookshelf, which doesn't matter to anybody because this is an audio podcast. But looking up at my bookshelf, and David Osler's book up there, Bridges, is up there. And one thing that he talks about just reminds me of your story, Ashlee, with your parents. That earlier on, your mom was the one that was more relaxed behaviorally in the church, but then she was the one that was like, I still want to stay in. And that's what we see a lot. Like there isn't a strong correlation when someone is exiting the church between behaviors. Like behaviors are very separate from beliefs.
Right.
There's a ton of millennials looking at the other book by Jenna Reese next to it. there's a lot of millennials that are full believers now that drink. Yeah. That are full believers, but they drink coffee. Right. They have premarital sex. They do all sorts of stuff. But, and so I think that's important. That helps break down that stigma as well, so that we don't fall into that trap again of saying like, well, what have you done wrong? Like you clearly, you weren't all in at some point, or something else was going on. And that's just not the case.
I want to go to Shane. Shane, what was your thoughts when you found out what was going on?
Yeah, it definitely really surprised me. I think that particular time, I think they had us staying in her mom's closet or something, sleeping in there, because it was a big family. It was like Thanksgiving and we had a bunch of family there. And so that was where we were, but we found a quiet space and she told me and it definitely took me way back, and I couldn't, certainly everything that she did present in terms of church history. Of course, I haven't, and even now, I don't feel like I've really invested a lot of time in studying that stuff. And so I was fiercely defendant, or, I would defend that and say, this is ridiculous, but, and I would try to defend every position or every point that she would say that her parents brought up. And so that's probably why Ashlee knew she didn't want me involved in those conversations with her parents, because she wanted us to have a quality relationship, and there would probably be some confrontation. And so that's where I was at the time when this was all starting, is I kind of felt, I was fully invested in the church and not necessarily reading scriptures every day and doing all the seminary answer kind of things that we had to do, but fully, no doubt, and believing. So
to this point, the listener probably doesn't know who made the faith transition, because I think up to this point, it sounds like it could be either of you, right? Yeah. Ashlee with your family, Ashlee with your family out, and then Shane going back to your feelings about your dad spending a lot of time with the church and not the family. Yeah. So when did it start to shift for either of you, and in what direction?
Well, I think, we were talking about this, and she. And I tend to agree. I feel like that really, that bombshell from her parents probably was the earliest sign of a little chink in my armor. Even though I was kind of positioning and posturing myself in this position of defending it to the end, I think it did strike me. And then as time went on, of course, different callings I had, took me away from my family, throughout dental school, and dental school is busy enough as it was. And so just this idea of, hey, these church leaders are calling you to this, AKA the Lord is calling you. If you say no to this, what are you doing? And just that, it's almost this guilt. I felt this. I don't know that was their intention, but I just felt this guilting into this. Like, how can I say no? And I felt just kind of pressured that way. And so that was starting to play in my mind. And I was kind of internally bothered by that. Something else that I struggled with, and even throughout our marriage, through the first half of our marriage, especially anytime I thought about this idea, as I got deeper into this and feeling like I needed to take a step back from the church and my activity, I was bothered by something that Ashlee told me when we were dating. And that was, she made it clear she would not marry me outside of the temple. And I felt kind of like, again, with going back to my confidence, I felt a little, that stings, to think that, okay, I'm not good enough. I'm not marriage material if I don't marry you in the temple. And that just hurt because, it still kind of does. You can see how I'm talking about it. Like I feel like the climate in the church sometimes breeds that type of a feeling and can make people feel really small. And so that's kind of what happened to me is I just wanted to feel, I just had felt like in my experience in the church, there were things that were making me feel guilty for, and then something that drove me crazy was priesthood meeting. Every time in priesthood meeting, they would be looking for volunteers for this. We need 4 brethren to do this. And we need this people to do this. Who will do it? We just need it's taking hands. And I just felt like, always you're seeing the same people raising your hands. And, I have no interest in doing whatever it was that they were asking. But, at the same time, I'm feeling guilty for not raising my hand. Like, gosh, I got the time. I probably have more time than this guy, but he keeps raising his hand. And he's so faithful. What am I? And so I just played that game in my head. Yeah. And it just, that's kind of where it started going downhill for me in terms of just my desires to be active in the church.
Right. That's so interesting. And I know that's like impossible. It's not our role to say, I'm so sorry that was your experience, but we are, I'm sorry that was your experience. Yeah, the church can ask a lot and it can hit people different ways. Some people really thrive on that sense of responsibility and the guilt never really seeps in. And it's a terribly positive experience or a wonderfully, maybe there's a better adjective, a wonderfully positive experience. But then in your case, it's like, this just doesn't serve me anymore. Like this is not helping me feel good about myself.
Yeah.
And going back to what is modeled in your home, I mean, I can see how that would affect you as a father. You even feel that guilt that, I should be doing that. This is what my dad did. Yeah. This is something that I should do. I should step up to. We can all go to therapy over a lot of things about how we grew up because everyone has their own beef. But I think that really is put on a pedestal in the church, right? Mm-hmm. The wife who supports the husband to do all of the things for everyone else except be with their family. Yeah. And I think that there are some positives to service for the women and for the men. But I also think that we have to stop feeling guilt and shame for not doing something when we are putting our family first. And that's something that that's a culture that really needs to go away in the church, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, something that, how he said that I had told him that I wouldn't marry him outside the temple. And it's something that I can see now, how that must have been very hurtful. But I remember when, before I am to where I am at right now, I just couldn't understand what he was saying. Like, I was like, what do you mean? Like, of course I wouldn't have married you, I didn't know, like, it was like ingrained in my head that this is I was ingrained in my head that I'm going to marry in the temple. It was like the goal, and so I couldn't I couldn't see a different path. And so I don't know, it took me a while to completely understand where he was coming from with that.
Well, I think most of the listeners, Katie and myself included, are in the same boat. Whether that conversation actually, literally audibly came out of your mouth before marriage of, hey, by the way, it's temple or bust, it was just understood. I always knew that you and I
Yeah.
were going to get married in the temple, and listeners.
I mean, we told your dad we couldn't wait a year to get married because we wouldn't be able to get married in the temple.
That's true.
Yeah.
we told him, hey, we want to get married in 4 months. And he's like, well, you should wait until a year from now. And we said, if you want a temple marriage,
Yeah.
it'll be in 4 months. And he said, okay.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know,
That's why we got married so fast.
yeah.
That's right. That's right. Wow. Okay. So Ashlee, if I can ask then, we've got a little chink in Shane's armor, right? Shane, you're experiencing a few things with Ashlee's family coming out. That was a curveball. We haven't heard that one before.
Yeah.
And so how does it progress from there to, is there a slow fade? Is there a moment where it's just, I can't do this anymore? And I know it's a little odd that I'm asking Ashlee, but kind of when did it become clear to you that Shane was kind of headed towards that direction?
I think it was after we moved to Kansas City. You know, I still remember the moment where he actually told me something. And before that, I think I didn't think much of, you know, his, I don't know what you call it, being passive or with the church or whatever. I didn't think much of it. But I remember, you know, we were already going through some difficult things in our marriage. And then when he told me, he sat me down and said, you know, that he was considering not going anymore. And I just was like, what? Like, how is this happening to me? You know, because I think that I tried preventing this from happening to my family. What happened to my parents and my siblings, I was not going to let happen to my family. And so when he told me that, it was just like, it was almost like the last straw for me. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay in this marriage now. Like I can't keep having all these things pile on me and then not break or not run. Like, you know what I mean? And so it just, I don't know. You know, there were signs before, like I said, but I didn't really pay attention to it because he was going.
I want to ask, you said that you tried to prevent it happening in your own family. In your mind, what did that look like? Were you all of a sudden super orthodox and trying everything?
Yeah, kind of. And I didn't realize that I was doing this, but it was like one of those things where I just got so afraid. I was like, oh my gosh, now I need to really get into this. I've got to study and study. I've got to know all the answers because I know my parents are going to come at me and I got to know how to answer them. And I have to be confident with what I'm saying, you know, so that I don't turn to their side. It was just like this, like, I got to just dive into this. And I did. I would say, my husband would probably say I kind of became obsessive with reading and studying and feeling, and I don't know. And in many ways, you know, there was a lot of good that came from it, but also I could see how there was a lot of fear behind those things that I was doing.
Well, and I would say also, I almost feel like, I mean, I certainly could never put it on her. But I was troubled by even that, her desires and the constant nature of her study, scriptures and stuff. You know, that's all she wanted to talk about when we were together. And I just felt like kind of second best, like, good grief. Can we put this topic away and let's do something else? Like, it was always, if you asked me, you know, what's the most important thing in your life, I would say her, would be my answer. And to her answer would be God. And then I'm second maybe, or whatever on that list. And somehow, you know, and I feel like maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. Maybe it is supposed to be God first, but in my mind, it just made me feel second best. And so that was a little thing too, that was troublesome. But yeah, getting back to Kansas City, I think that's really where it started, or where it kind of blatantly came out that I was not active for an extended period of time. You know, in Japan, I was in the branch presidency out there, super busy, you know, spending hours at church, just like I was talking about my dad, having seen my dad do. Mm-hmm. And towards the end, about a month or maybe 2 months, 2 months maybe before we moved back here to Kansas City, I asked to be released. I said, hey, we got to release me. We're having a baby. We are going to be moving. And the branch president didn't want to release me yet. And there was the other counselor was almost in the exact same boat as me. He just wasn't moving, but he was having a kid. And I said, well, I'm not him. I'm me. I'm asking, you need to release me. And then of course he finally does. And then they call the stake presidency, some stake presidency member calling me in, asking me types of questions like, oh, what's going on? Are you doing okay? Like I could tell he was checking in on me, probably because I'd been asked to be released. And when we got to Kansas City, they wanted to call me to be the Cub Scout leader. I initially said yes, because that's what I always do. And I went back and told him after, no, I don't think I can do this. And he's like, hey, if you can be in the Air Force, you can be the Cub Scout leader. And I said, well, that's not what I'm not, I don't feel like that's something I'm willing to commit to right now. And he said, well, what makes you different? All these other people have not enough time either, but what makes you different? Why should you be the one that doesn't have a calling when everybody else is doing it?
Why are you so special?
Yeah. That's kind of the way he was approaching me. And it was really off-putting to me. I respect the man, and had positive experiences before and after this conversation with him, but I was very frustrated by that experience when I asked. And it goes back to that same idea that how do you say no to this? This is the Lord's chosen leaders asking you as if from the Lord himself. And it just, I needed to take a step back because I was not in a good mental place with it. And so that's kind of where I just wanted to stop going for a bit.
It sounds like, both from Ashlee, you talking about how focused and you were studying and you were doing all these things. And then Shane, how busy you were. It sounds a little bit like it was suffocating in Japan because you had so many things going on. Plus, Ashlee, you were trying to control, right? What you thought you could control. And then you got to where you were in Kansas City, and no, there's no control there. I'm done with the calling. I'm done with everything. And then so your worst nightmare comes true. Really. And how do you handle it? What did you do when you realized he is not coming back?
I don't know. I feel like because I had worked through a lot of things with my whole family leaving the church, it somewhat helped me in this position, even though it was still hard. Had they not left and then he left, I don't know what I would have done. Part of me is like, maybe I would have left him. So I'm glad my family left so I could learn from that. But him leaving, it was more that I think I just felt sorry for myself.
Sure.
Like, how did this happen? This was not supposed to happen. This was not in the plan. I want him here with me. I come to church and I feel alone. People are looking at me like they feel sorry for me. Poor Ashlee, pity me. And I don't want people pitying me. And so it was hard for a while and around the same time too, my best friend told me she left. And so, it was just kind of getting to this place where I had to accept it. And I had to shift the way I was thinking, cause I just couldn't stay where I was at. I don't know. It was hard. It was hard for a while, but I eventually figured out how to get to a different place.
So how long ago was this where you found out and you stopped going? How many years has this been?
I would say, 3 years or?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, probably most of 3 years that I've not really been. I've been pretty spotty here and there with attendance. I would go occasionally. And there was even one time the bishop asked me to come in. I hadn't been to the church in how long? It had been months, almost a year. And they called me in to give me a calling. And what's funny is at that time I accepted that and actually went through a phase of being super active again for a period of time, but only to kind of fall back in these same feelings and finding myself not wanting to be there. Why am I even here? I'm a puppet. I'm I'm faking it. And that's the thing that I hated the worst is I felt like a phony. Like I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid here, but yet I'm still walking this. And so if I feel like I'm a phony, or, faking it, I couldn't do that. And so that's kind of why, again, I'm back where I'm at with just not feeling like I want to be there. I feel triggered at times when, the boys had young men's activities or this or that. We're just getting home from work and, we got to rush the kids over here for this church activity or that. And I just get like, just turn it off. Like I feel suffocating is a word. I feel like that really does. I got to a point where it wasn't serving me. And in fact, it was just infuriating me, getting me more and more upset and feeling I go from 0 to 60 in terms of my emotions, depending on, if church is brought up. Like it's a sensitive kind of topic, depending on what it is. Like those types of activities, I get frustrated, find myself getting frustrated pretty quickly sometimes with that.
Yeah, I remember one time the missionaries coming over uninvited again, and he didn't like that. Like, don't come uninvited at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
And
we were watching a movie and, and I feel bad about this. I don't feel like I'm a mean guy. I'm a pediatric dentist. I work with kids all the time. So I felt so frustrated though. We were watching I think it was a game. There's a football game on or something. And they just popped in and I was a missionary. I'm kind of ashamed at the same time to think, why did I treat them like this? But they knocked on the door. Ashlee answered it. They wanted to come in. They didn't have anything necessarily, but they wanted to chat with us. And she invited him in to stay. And I looked at her like, what are you doing? We're watching a game. And so I just came over. So what's going on here? And, I just did not look pleased. I was like, so, hey, what's going on? And they were like, oh, we just wanted to share a message. I was like, well, we got plans tonight. If you want to come over here, you need to call us and you need to give us a heads up. Don't just be popping in. And so I did dismiss them a little bit. I actually called them later and apologized. I didn't mean to be that way, but I just feel triggered sometimes with it. And that was one of the ways that it kind of manifested itself.
Yeah. And I think with him leaving, it was completely different watching my family leave versus him leaving. Because with him, I'm in it with him. He's my husband. I'm seeing what's going on with him. Mm-hmm. So I started also seeing things differently than I ever had before and started getting frustrated by things that things I never saw. And so that's when things started changing for me. And I still was studying a lot, still seeking a lot. I love prayer. I love connecting with God. I feel like I figure my things out that way. And so I personally started shifting a little bit, started where I used to see like religion and God as one. I started seeing this gap growing between the two as I was, just trying to figure all these things out. And it kind of freaked me out there for a little while. I was like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? But I just kept having this feeling of let the process happen. Like, I've trusted everything that's happened so far, and I just need to allow these things and just not be afraid and run from it, but just see where it goes. And so that's what I did. And anyway, so now I feel like I'm just a very nuanced member, and I don't know, and where I have a lot of things that really bother me about religion now, I still am very close to God. And then I feel like he's a little different. We're kind of different in that aspect. I don't know that he feels the same way I feel about God.
Well, here's a personal question. How do you feel about God, Shane?
Well, she talks like she has this connection with him. And I feel nothing. Like I don't have a connection. And so it's like I go through the motions and so, I want to every now and again, I'll go, hey, let's pray before we eat our dinner, or something like that. And I'll do that. And right before Christmas, Christmas Eve, we would always read Luke chapter 2 and have a little kind of gospel Christ-centered conversation. And I felt a few feelings there as we were talking. That's the most I remember feeling in a while, actually. But for the most part, I feel numb. I kind of feel numb to it. The biggest thing though is I can't explain what's the purpose of life without the gospel view of the purpose of life. I have no answer. And so I feel like, well, God must exist, but at the same time, I don't feel him. And so it's just harder to see for me right now. So I feel kind of in a confused position where I'm really a little bit uncertain in terms of that type of thing. I don't feel necessarily driven to find the answer so much either at the same time, but I do feel, I kind of feel just kind of up in the air. Like I don't really know.
So thank you for sharing that, Shane.
Yeah.
Sometimes the uncertainty, there's different approaches to it. And I'm sensing a little bit of apprehension with the uncertainty that it's, you wish you could know.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I'm troubled by the fact that I don't know.
Okay.
And so it's kind of like, and again, you, Katie, you kind of mentioned earlier, just the idea of, seeing my dad, how that was modeled. Like the man was, in my mind, this guy's a saint. Like he was multiple bishoprics. He was a bishop. He was a stake president. This guy has done so much in the church and modeled this perfect father image. How am I even, I can't live up to that standard, and my kids are getting, when they're getting ordained, they're all boys, so, and they're all spread out to where there's ordinations I feel like happening all the time. These kids are turning the right ages to where they need ordained and they need their dad to do that. And I just feel like, for a while I was kind of, all right, I'll get a little active a few months or, a few weeks before. And so I'll feel more comfortable being the man to ordain him. And then it got to a point where I can't do it. I can't fake it. Bishop, why don't you ordain him? And so I had the bishop ordained some of our boys at different times. But yeah, it's kind of hard. I forgot what your question was in regard to what got me going on this topic, but that's some of the things that I think about in regard to this is how much I look up to my dad for what he did, but at the same time, have felt trouble that measuring up to that standard has been difficult for me. And my parents know maybe somewhat of my struggles of where I'm at now. And I was surprised I felt relieved in the moment when I kind of presented some of those issues to them. They were receptive, and they certainly didn't agree with my thoughts in regard to what I was saying or believing about myself or about this situation, but at the same time, felt understanding. But then again, months go by and I can tell, they sent even their Christmas gifts that they sent us. They sent us like a nightlight that has a Salt Lake Temple on it and plug it into the wall. I just felt like very church-centered types of gifts. And, I would hate if they listened to this conversation. Like I would be so ungrateful. But at the same time, I feel like there's a motive in what they're doing, in what they're giving, and in what they say on there's family group chats and things like that. I feel like they are concerned and worried about our family because of how we're believing, and
I think that they're doing what they themselves were taught to do, right? To continue to fellowship and reach out, and especially to their own children. And I think many of us feel that we are in the same situation. So I want to just validate that that's not uncommon. Their motives from their eyes are coming from a place of love, right?
Yeah.
And even though they don't quite understand the depth and breadth of what's happening in the home, they don't see it day to day. That was one of my biggest gripes is like, you don't see our day to day and how we function as a family. And that's hard. It's hard to be gracious enough to accept a temple nightlight and not throw it in the
Yeah.
garbage.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a special building. That's where we were married, the Salt Lake Temple. And there was some other gifts. I don't know. I just felt like, especially the gifts that were given to Ashlee, because she's been a little bit more vocal in terms of her position on Instagram, and my mom sees that. And so I feel like they're a little bit more
I think they're
concerned
worried
about her position
Sure.
right now. And so I just felt like there was a motive behind what they were doing and
Sure.
saying and giving. And so
Sure.
it's hard. You don't want to feel like a project. You just want to feel loved. And
Absolutely.
Yeah. No strings attached.
No
You don't
strings
want strings attached to that love. Of course not. And oh, man, can I say you guys are a breath of fresh air? Because Shane, as you're telling your story, I feel this angst, right? I feel how this is still it's presently a constant struggle for you. Am I wrong?
Can you restate that? You guys froze for a second.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, did we? Okay.
yes.
So Shane, as you're telling your story, I'm sensing like whether the emotion's coming back or it's still present, like this is an ongoing struggle, that confidence, the wanting to be able to answer these questions. Your journey and what you're experiencing and sharing now is so different from, I would dare to say, most people's exit from the church.
Mm-hmm.
I'm your typical late 30s stumbled on church history guy. And that's a lot of men my age are that way, where the church and women. No, for sure. But for me, it was the history. And then it was, well, shoot, even though this works really well for me, I'm now hearing things that I know aren't quite the way that I thought they were. And I've read this and now the bishop is saying that, and I need to meet with him. And all of a sudden I'm feeling like it doesn't work for me because of that. Yeah. But, and I feel like your story is so much different. It's so much different than that. And I really appreciate you sharing it because it's teaching me a lot. And Ashlee, I'm getting a little bit, curious. Shane mentioned your Instagram account and sort of your position. What are you sharing on Instagram?
Yeah.
I feel like I've just been trying to share my journey. It's been a little scary. But I am someone who loves to write, and my mind is just always thinking, and I'll just get random insights. And as I'm reading or doing whatever, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and I can't help but share when I have those moments, like I have to get it out and I don't know how to describe it. I just have to get it out. So I started that Instagram page to just get all of that out. And then, anyways, and I just share, the things that I've learned in the process of having family leave, and also the things that I'm experiencing in that process.
Right.
I want to go to, you guys were talking about your boys earlier, right? Getting the priesthood. And one of the biggest sources of contention, besides how are we going to work through this, is how do we raise children now? Like, what is it that we're going to do? Are we going to allow them to fully participate? Are we going to allow them to choose for themselves? How do we handle that?
At what age can they choose not to go?
So what, if you wouldn't mind, Ashlee, talking a little bit about how you've been able to work through that?
That has been really hard, actually. Because, we've talked about it, and I'm like, when do we, because, Shane has been pretty open with them. When he first decided to stop going, we're like, well, we got to share something, like this is going to look weird to them. Why isn't dad coming? So he has been open with them and saying, I just can't go right now. I'm just experiencing these feelings that, I can't remember exactly how he said it, but just was open about it. And so, but then, and I was the one that was, taking them. It was that was my job. And I felt like it was my job to take them. And then once I started getting to where I'm at, which was just this year really of, it all started, I think, in quarantine. And so, I got to where I was like, I'm not sure I feel like going every Sunday. And then I'm like, well, what about the boys? And I started feeling, a little bit still the weight of I need to be taking them, but then kind of like, Like I think we were talking one Sunday and Shane brought it up, and then it just all came out where I was at. And I just let them know that I was just in a place where I was unsure. And, I knew my connection with God. I just don't know. I'm uncertain about the church is basically what I said. But I also said, I don't think we have to know. And I wanted them to know, we both let them know that we support whatever they want to do. Like, I will take you anytime you want to go. If you don't want to go, okay. I'm just, I'm tired of like trying to push my agenda because I've learned that even when I try to, it just doesn't work out the way I want it to. And so, but I personally still feel guilt on some Sundays. Sundays can be kind of hard if we don't go. I feel like, and Shane knows this, like if we don't go, I feel like, okay, well, we need to sit down and we need to do something like our own little sacrament meeting. And then, he's just like, wait a second, why? Like we don't have to. And so it's just this mentality, I guess. I don't know. There's still a little fear there. Like if we don't do these things with them, then what's going to happen? I mean, maybe they won't be successful adults,
There are no successful non-LDS adults. That is a good point.
I know.
I know what you mean. I mean. I get it. I absolutely get it. Ashlee, I have a message for the listeners, specifically those believing spouses that are listening. Like, this could be really difficult to listen to. It can be difficult. A lot of spouses have this fierce hope and desire for them to stay. I want to stay. Yeah. I'm going to stay. The church works for me, and hearing someone that used to be in that position, that not necessarily is heading out, but is now in a different position. It's scary for them to hear that. It's scary to think, no, don't share this. And listeners, I want to be really clear and direct. Every single couple who comes and shares their experience on this podcast is their own unique marriage and experience, and is completely, fully valid. If this specific couple is not your story, that's great. That's totally fine. There are so many different paths through mixed faith marriage, so many. And we've seen, Katie and I have seen a lot of them. And, Ashlee, I hope that, that you are getting a lot of support in where you're at as well. You mentioned maybe some of your family there's family members that are a little concerned and on Shane's side about you sharing things like that. But do you feel supported in what you're trying to do, sharing your story too?
I feel supported on the Marco Polo group that I get on. That is where I go when I need the support, honestly. And my family, they all stopped going, but I can't go to them because they are very just, like I did let my mom in a little bit on, a little bit of where I'm at. And she was like, oh, so Gavin's not serving a mission, is he? And I was like, well, I'm leaving that up to him. He's going to decide. What? You would let him go on a mission and teach something that's not true? I'm like, I'm not deciding that for him, so like I can't go to them either. And so there are times where I feel like I can talk to my husband, but, he can still get triggered. It's just not his topic. And so I know when I can talk and when I can't, type of thing. So I go to the Marco Polo group. That's where I find my support.
And they are an amazing group of women. I've been on and off. I can't keep up with 30 messages a day, but
I know
the times I hop on, they are such loving, wonderful, supportive women.
They really are. They're very supportive, and I feel like they know exactly where I'm at. They are very wise. I really love listening to them.
I want to make a comment. Alan mentioned if this isn't your story, right? That's okay. It looks different for every couple, but I think that there is wisdom in every couple's story. So even if it's not your story, even if you don't directly relate to it, you can absolutely understand some of the feelings and the takeaways from an interview like this, because we're all have a similar thread in being in this group together, right?
Yeah.
Shane, I want to ask a sensitive question. So
Yeah.
if you don't want to answer, let me know. But
delete.
I want to ask, knowing what you know from your past and how your father modeled how to be a father, how to do church, how do you want your kids to know how fathers act outside of the church? What is it that you want to model to your children if they decide to stay in or if they decide to stay out?
Well, the biggest thing that I want my kids to get from me is just being men of integrity and being open. And I am fully honest with them in terms of where I'm at. I feel like I try to inspire them to just be the best version of themselves, whatever that looks like. I want them to respect, other people's opinions, despite the fact that they may differ from their own. And so anyway, that's really what I hope that they gain from me, is that they see an imperfect father that's willing to admit that, and that's understanding and can listen. And I don't know, in terms of their spiritual side, I feel like there is a component of a spiritual version of themselves that they need to cultivate. And I worry that I'm not helping grow that well enough. I think that's where Ashlee comes in. Maybe she's a lot better at it than I am in regard to that. I don't know if that fully addresses your question or not, but I just feel like those are the things that are important to me that my kids, I hope, can gain the sense of. I do. And I would be proud to have them serve a mission, just knowing, what it did for me, despite the fact that I'm where I'm at the moment. I feel like they could still, that was a big part of becoming a man for me and growing up. And so I feel like they can learn that there. They can learn it in other ways too, though. So it doesn't require a mission to get to there. But I'm not in a position. What's interesting is I don't want to attend church, but I don't necessarily, disagree with the basic tenets of the church, or, I don't read a bunch of material that would be antagonistic towards the church's doctrines and things like that. That's, so it's kind of like I'm in a weird spot where I kind of believe, but I don't, and I don't want to attend, but yet, I can, and I'll defend the church if it's spoken of in a certain way. I find myself even getting defensive towards it, but backing it up. So I'm in a weird spot in terms of where I'm at. But I'm still deep in the trenches of figuring that aspect out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And hey, thank you for answering. That's not an easy question to answer, because it's hard to imagine really like what impact you're having on your own children, because they have their own points of views and their own stories that they're telling themselves about who their parents are. And so, but I like what you said about integrity, because clearly that's what you're living right now. You're trying to figure it out. It doesn't feel good to go. So a man of integrity wouldn't be there. And you're supporting your wife and your kids and whatever they choose to do. And that is the best thing that you could model to them. So I just want to validate that.
Oh, thank you.
I want to validate something too. Shane, I'm connecting a couple of dots, but you're making some light bulbs go off in my head as well. You mentioned you would be great. It would be fine if your boys, or if one of your kids wanted to serve a mission. And, you want them to learn how to respect other people's beliefs and opinions. And who wouldn't say that? So that's great.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking towards that mission, and like, I'm actually now looking back at my mission. I think that I could have used a father with the message that you just shared. Not to say that my dad shared anything wrong, but I think I went, as many of us do on missions, with this chip on my shoulder of, I have something that will help everyone. And if they don't listen, that's on them. When really the approach should be, I have something that might really work for some people. And I need to go find those people who it will work for. And if someone doesn't want to listen to it, well, then it's not for them. They already have something that is working for them. Mm-hmm. That is not the attitude that I took as a missionary. Mm-hmm. I think that's the first step to a modern missionary being successful, is recognizing there are people that this could help. I think of Bill Reel, right? Bill Reel was a mess, and the church really helped him in that. And he still talks about that today, where he was on drugs and the church pulled him out of it. And he's very grateful to this day for it. Didn't end up working out for him a decade and a half later. But so thank you for sharing that, because I've never had that moment of clarity of how I wish that's such a small little thing for me to piece together, because I loved my mission a lot. Yeah. But now I think, man, I could have been much more compassionate if I would have taken that approach. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ashlee, what have been some of the wins in your marriage, things that you've worked through, things that you've learned that has really helped you grow and come closer together?
Oh, how do I even answer that? Some wins.
Loaded.
I know. I think gosh, marriage is really hard. And then when you throw in these kind of things, it's just like super hard. But honestly, I feel like these things have, even in the hard parts of it, I feel like it's really helped me to see him. It's helped me to also find a bit more of myself. And it's helped me to really try to see outside of my box and understand. And so I feel like, personally for me, those are my wins. Like, being able to get past my own self and to really experience my husband and what he's gone through, and for me to become a different person, a better version of myself because of those things. I'm lucky because I feel like he's really good at listening to me, and I've probably not been as great, honestly. So I don't know how things would have gone if I had a husband that was like as stubborn or maybe as hard-headed as I can be, and not to say he can't be, but anyways, I feel like the fact that we just keep trying to show up for each other every single day and not give up, like we just don't know how to give up. So we just keep trying every day with it.
I think I would say a win is kind of goes along with what she said. Just the communication. We would at nights have a check-in, and that happened, for a long time. We were kind of in the depths of this, and for over a year regularly had a set time where we were checking in with each other in regard to things and just communicating where we were at. And I felt like, those opportunities, the more we did it, the better we were able to see the other side. There were days when we didn't want to see the other side, and you're just frustrated. You don't have the energy to feel like you can give empathy to the other. And so, but that consistent effort that we invested in ourselves made a difference, I feel like, and has deepened our love for each other, helped us know that we got each other's backs. And so that's where I would say our biggest win was just the effort we put in terms of communicating hard, difficult conversations and keeping a level head and trying to keep emotion out of it and just be clear. Know you have the ability to say whatever you got on your mind, and know that person, the other person, is going to listen and hear you. And whether they respond exactly how you want, you can't always guarantee that. But for the most part, that you're safe in that environment.
We usually ask at the end what advice you would give, but you just said it right there. I mean, you took your own advice. That's really good advice for others to hear as well. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up or talk about that we haven't talked about yet?
I don't think so. I mean, yeah, I could talk for a long time about all of this.
We'll have to do a part 2 and part 3.
Yeah.
How have you been able to find support? You said through the Marco Polo group, you found support from other women. Do you connect with women who are in the ward anymore, or is that difficult for you, Ashlee?
Oh, that's been kind of hard. I've had a hard time with that, and there was one friend that I really connected strongly with, and then she started following my stuff and she really came at me, telling me I should not be. She said I was encouraging people to leave the church, which I never did. I was just, for people who are in my position, it was just more of how can you get to a different place of understanding, and anyway, she just really came at me about it, and it was very off-putting to me. And so then that one that friendship, I mean, if I were to see her, I would be totally fine. I just don't know. It just kind of is a little weird at this point. Mm-hmm. And so I've found that I don't know how now to interact sometimes with some of the women at church. And while part of me feels like they probably wouldn't like my positioning, the other part is like maybe more of them feel more like I do than I realize. And I think some of the women in my Marco Polo group actually also brought that to my attention. And I realized, yeah, I think so.
Something magical happens when you start to share your inner story. When you start to be public, those people seek you out. People that feel the same way that, we've had so many people, even just in our ward, that have no idea about the podcast. That will approach and say, when I was still attending, they would text me, and after I would raise my hand and make a comment defending LGBTQ rights or something like that, and I would get 3 or 4 text messages saying, "I could never say that, but thank you for saying that." Like there are consequences to speaking out, as you just explained. Friendships can be damaged or even lost, but then that's how you find people that feel the same way. And that in and of itself is, finding the support for yourself, harvesting the support yourself.
Well, and I mean, Ashlee, as you know, when you have people or you're surrounded by people and maybe the reaction is so violent or so negative, a lot of times there's a lot of fear deep down. There's fear of what someone else's opinion, how it could change yours. There's fear about underlying feelings that you've always had that you haven't been able to address. I'm going to write a book that's called Afraid of the Answers, because I think most of us are afraid of asking ourselves and our spouses because we don't want to hear the answers, right?
Yes.
And it sounds like your journey has been one of self-discovery and finding the answers that you're looking for. Is that what you feel like?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I feel like I've always been able to find the answers that I'm looking for. And often they've come in very different ways than I ever expected. But yeah, I would say you're pretty accurate in that.
Shane, I want to ask you the same question with the support question, because unlike me, I've got this whole post-Mormon community that can sympathize with the church history rabbit hole that I went down. Do you feel like you get the support you need and where you're at?
I find connections. And in regard to this topic, I truly just don't share it very often. I keep it pretty close to my heart. But my brothers, I have a little brother that's probably my best friend, and we could share anything with him, and he's fully aware. They came out for Thanksgiving, and he'd known some of the stuff, but we kind of rolled it all out for him at Thanksgiving. And he shared some of the things that he had felt that they're going through, and a lot of similarities in some ways. And so, I get that connection through venting to Ashlee, venting to my brother. So I kind of get that through the family. I don't really have much more of a circle in terms of that. I feel like I can tell I haven't fully resolved my feelings in my mind, because I think about my mission again, and my mission president, and just absolutely loved him. And so many missionaries that I respected and that I know respected me, I would struggle to have them find out where I'm at. And I still haven't, and I'm bothered by the fact that I feel that way. Like, if these people were so important to me, why wouldn't I be comfortable sharing, my innermost thoughts? Shouldn't that be a safe place? And I really keep it pretty close, honestly, in terms of who I share this stuff with.
Yeah. I mean, you're sharing very, very personal details with people. So,
well, and I think it's hard to share when you haven't figured it out.
Yeah. Well, it's still kind of up in the air.
Yeah. Most of us want to, like, when we went to family members about where we were, it took us a whole year, because we wanted to figure it out before we came out with all of this, because we thought, no, it's going to be more damaging if we say that there's all these things going on. So I think that that's natural, like a natural instinct to figure it out and then tell everyone what you've decided.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I mean, you've just now shared with hundreds, maybe dozens, I don't know how many is listening, but you've just shared with a whole community of people who can really relate and feel what you're going through. What's so interesting about your story is that, like, you two could swap places where, Shane, you said, I could defend the church. I still, love my mission. And Ashlee's like, well, I have issues, but I still want this connection. And so I think that it's such a unique thing. And anyway, we are just so grateful that you came on to share with us. So thank you so much for sharing your story and your time with us.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I just want to give you guys some feedback. I can clearly tell you have a gift for discussing this, opening the types of questions, and I can just tell you guys are awesome people. So too bad you're not living close by or visiting KC, because we would love to chat more for sure. Well,
I'm going to snake my way into another work trip to Missouri so I can come and visit you guys.
I'll be on his companion ticket, and we'll go to that Mexican restaurant.
We'll go get margaritas.
Where Alan got the margarita.
That would be awesome.
Oh, that's so fun. No, I appreciate you saying that, Shane. Yeah. You are very easy people to want to get to know.
Yeah.
You're charismatic, you're charming, and you have interesting things to say.
All right. Oh, cool.
You hit all the points.
That's right. All right. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks, guys.